Chicago. The HAL Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
HAL Sparks. Actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
HAL Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
I insist. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We should be up on everything. Hello, chat room. Everybody, happy Thanksgiving post. A happy tryptophan recovery session, I guess.
I am still napping.
Yeah, well, that's
Currently.
always kind of true. Isn't it, though?
It is.
Hold on. All right.
yeah.
Now, there we go. I have to update my titles on this thing because it's so low-end holiday nonsense on my part. I apologize to everybody who's on there. Philip Bittner will be joining us from Ukraine. Also, here's the big hello. Hi, Johnny Million. Did you consume mass quantities on Turkey Day, I suppose?
You know, the turkey this year, I got to hand it to my father-in-law, was stellar. He did a fantastic job.
Look at that. Well, because I'm in one of those households where children get swapped around via the holidays, both to and the fro.
I heard this not the Duggars.
No, where they have plenty anyways, right? Where they just pair off. Although I don't think the Duggars work like that anymore because isn't the dad in jail for being very Trump buddy?
Yeah.
Very Trump adjacent with his kids. Yikes. So we had one of those swap arounds and whereas like I have my son for Christmas this year. He's at his mom's for Thanksgiving and New Year's. That's the kind of those two holidays are worth one Christmas apparently, according to the courts. And I
kind of agree with the math.
Yeah, I do too. And in many ways, like those are the two that are work because I actually think that New Year's. I mean, we know how the holidays work out. Everybody knows how the holidays work out. These are all pagan holidays that were overtaken by some religion or these just society's response to waning daylight. In that you start with your standard harvest, like fruit picking holiday where everybody starts candying the fruit. That's Halloween, where everybody starts taking all the fruit that will rot first and candying it so it will last through the winter when everybody is dying of hunger. And that when there's leftovers of those things, the kids used to go around in the villages knocking on doors and getting the leftover candied cherries or the candied whatever, and the sugar would turn them into little demons, and hence a holiday where like, I don't know what it is. These kids just act like monsters. There must be something in the trees. And like, no, maybe it's the sugar you're shoveling down their throat that turns them into little sunken gray-eyed beasts who are like, give me candy or I will burn down your house, right? And then Thanksgiving, of course, the last, big hunt before things get really cold, right? That's before you kill the hog and hide him in the snow till Christmas.
Get all Hunger Games.
Yeah, you get all Hunger Games and you eat all the stuff that you haven't dried. Essentially, that was the other thing. So you eat all the corn you haven't dried. And my cousin, it's so funny. Like we will have our biggest Thanksgiving at my cousin's house, oftentimes in Cleveland. Home of the lowest median house price of any major metropolitan area in the country, for good reason. And I personally think it's props.
That's not a good thing.
No, not at all. Yeah. I actually don't think it's even the mistake by the lake stuff. I think it's the proximity to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But that's just me. But so my cousin, my aunt and my cousin put on this thing, and my son lovingly refers to it as the feast. Right? Yeah. So
I like it.
Little kids will often grab onto the word feast because it shows up in a Charlie Brown cartoon or something. You know what I mean? Or Dr. Seuss. And so the feast shall happen there. But we had the big conversation last year, and it stuck with my son, and I think is the idea that you're not eating corn on the cob, you're just eating corn. Corn comes on the cob in the first place. If you're eating it any other way, it's corn off the cob. And I think that's an important distinction, and that's the kind of family we are. We are a family that makes a distinction between corn and corn off the cob. Corn on the cob is ridiculous. That's just corn. So thank you. I couldn't tell if that was a laugh or one of your fart buttons, but it doesn't matter. So anyways, it was this year. Thank you for that. Also, I want to thank SG in our chat room for my fart piano that arrived finally. It's pretty fantastic. I finally got all my birthday gifts, which were like lost in the mail. Apparently, my mailbox company mailed it to the wrong house. And there was this apparently a big box, and they had to go hunt it down, and it finally arrived at my house, and I was like, these people are so sweet to me, and I was crying, and it was adorable. So thanks, everybody who sent birthday gifts, and it took forever. I'll do a show and tell next week because I have all these wonderful things sitting around now. Now, that said, we have a lot to talk about news-wise this week, and I have to say, I'm trying to avoid, in my discussing of the news that's going around, the sort of holding pattern panic that's going around that is, I think, very well encompassed in the discussions leading up to, oh my God, is Matt Gaetz going to be the Attorney General? And I was just like going, no. And everybody's like, but I don't know, this is crazy. I'm like, yes, it's crazy, but no. And that you can almost... That was like the bullion cube, to borrow a cooking reference from the holiday, of stress for everyone. It was like shrink all of the stress down, take all the water out of it, and just have this painfully savory chunk of awful that you just have to throw in your mouth and blah, blah, blah. And in this particular instance, that panic around everybody else, which we will discuss, not the least of which is Pete Hegseth's mom's email to the court.
I just read that this morning. Oh, my word.
Woof. Now, she walked it back after everything was over, which speaks to two possibilities. And we will discuss that after the break when we get to that, because it's going to require a certain amount of attention. It's a little on the nose for Fox, honestly. But one of the other things I want to talk about is the illusion of Doge that has apparently taken off. That naming it a department was enough to make it a department as far as so many people are concerned, unless you have to talk about it verbally. I've noticed that when it comes to the New York Times, Washington Post, any of these other, even the Guardian, they will refer to this Doge business as Doge and just call it Doge and move on, when it is not indeed a department. A department has to be authorized by the government. It has to be paid for. It has to have officers. It has to have an inspector general to qualify.
Like you said, authorized by the government. Doesn't it have to go through both houses?
Yes, it does. It has to be passed by an act of Congress because it has to be funded. See Department of Education, right? And how hard it will be for them to... thank you, David. I feel the same way.
Agreeing with you.
I will often, read the news. I can do almost all of those, so we'll get it lost in a whole thing. Johnny is
He's
literally
very positive.
Oh, yes.
He's never screaming, no, no, no.
Nope. Ain't talking about love, but am talking about intercourse would be the proper way of reading that. So that's what I personally think that's what that song should have been called. That said,
He's talking about intercourse.
One of the biggest I guess leading us into today's show, if I may, and hi chat room, love you guys. Hello, good morning, and how are you? Welcome. Where are you? What you doing? What'd you eat? What didn't you eat? Summer and Ethan and his girlfriend and I all had dinner we had Din Tai Fung, which is it's a dumpling place that used to be. There was only two of them. One was in Taipei, in Taiwan, and the other one was in Monterey Park outside of Los Angeles. Those are the only two that existed in the world. Now they're a chain, they're everywhere, and I was their single evangelist for a very long time, and I'm very proud of the work that I've done. It's fantastic. If you ever get to eat at Din Tai Fung, best, as my dad would often say, be careful not to sit one of these dumplings on top of your head because your tongue will beat your brains out trying to get to it. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, we're very country in that regard. We got a bunch of those.
I love that one. Wow, that's great.
My grandfather used to say of dishes that he wanted you to eat, it'll purr your teeth, curl your hair, and give your tongue a sleigh ride. Purr your teeth, curl your hair, and give your tongue a sleigh ride.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. And seldom did it. But that said, I do have wavy hair, and my teeth are just fine. Thank you very much. That's especially compared to the 40s, I guess. Snowy St. Louis. I hope everybody's on the warm side of a bay window listening to this for the better part of the country. And one of the things that we're going to discuss today is this whole Doge notion that it even exists as a department. It is not. Let me just start out by reminding everyone, Doge is not a department. It is COGE at best, a committee on government efficiency, and it is not even that. Right. It is a LGOGE. It is a lobbying group on government efficiency. Now, will he have a fast track because there'll be a Doge committee in the House and Senate run by maggots? Yeah. Will it have any more impact than half the Freedom Caucus signing on to something? No. And as we now know, let's see. Trump's clock starts ticking on January, and he's already behind because there is no peace deal in Ukraine or Israel. As a matter of fact, the only ceasefire that's happened in Israel happened because the Biden administration negotiated a ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel, which Hezbollah immediately violated. But, yeah, I mean, you can't fault them for trying. That said, we'll take a break. We'll be back right after this. And I want to remind everybody that Donald Trump has officially early last week, lost his lead in the Electoral College in terms of he does not have a majority. He has less than 50%. Both candidates got under 50% of the electorate this time around, which means a third of the country warned 2/3 of the country of what's coming, and we're sad to be right. We'll be back.
We tried.
Yeah. Hey, everybody, by the way, we're in break now, and you're listening to HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, After Hours. That's these little breaks where Johnny can use dirty words and use more fart sound effects. That said, yeah, right. Get it out of your system. That said, there's a podcast, the HAL Sparks podcast, Mega Worldwide. Please give it a listen. Please give it a like. Please give it a subscribe, or Ron Hartenbaum will drop it, apparently. Because he's a killer. Apparently, one of the issues it seems that I'm up against in the world of left-leaning social media, I don't even like that. Let's call it what I would say 1 to 2 o'clock social media, because I believe it's a dial, and that there's. I think the farthest you need to go is 3 and 9, left to right, as it were. And anybody midnight to 2 is a little...
20 seconds.
Thank you. 20 seconds. Don't swear after 20 seconds, Johnny Million.
Okay.
Shit. You shit.
All right, 20 seconds of horse shit.
Yep, 20.
Oh, no,
he said
I
20.
left the mics
Stop.
on.
Oh, no.
Welcome back to the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So the margin of popular vote that Donald Trump gained on this one was 1.5%. 1.5%, which gave him a 316 vote electoral college win, which should say something to you about the quality of what the electoral college gives you versus the quality of what the actual voters want. It would seem to me that the electoral college should sort of waver within the margin of that 1.5%, but indeed it does not. You know how hardly anybody owns a Bitcoin. Everybody owns millibits of a Bitcoin, whatever, the tens of thousands of percentage of a single, that kind of thing. That's how the electoral college should be at some point. We need to start, how you can buy pieces of stock now, which is very strange, and I still try to wrap my head around it, and I'm not quite sure what it means. But you can like reinvest your earnings back into a stock, but back in the day, it had to be like build up or something, and then you could buy one share, and then that was that. You could buy segments of pieces of slices of a share. I think the same thing should be true of the Electoral College. That the Electoral College, keep it if you want to, but start slicing it finer and finer by the population and size and economic output of the state, kind of like in a big, overall. I don't know, like a stock market of ideas. Yes, Apple stock is $230 a share, but you can buy a piece of a share and give it to your kid for $30. Okay, same thing with the Electoral College. Sure, I don't know, Wyoming has 2 or whatever, but did the whole state vote that way? No, it was a little like 60-40. So maybe a share of that goes to the person who got 40. And I think you would see, if that were the case, that none of these states were winner take all, that if some of them shift from winner take all to winner take some, then you get in a big trouble because you have these red states handing over a little bit or a couple and helping somebody wedge over the top. But overall, if you just, eliminated the winner take all thing entirely and they get allocated by percentage of the vote per state, you start getting a little more competitive even in red states for Democrats, and that would be one of the things that we wouldn't have to ice skate uphill anyways against every single time. That said, Trump's percentage is 1.5%. 1.55%. It's a 0.5% smaller than Hillary's wedge in 2016.
Wow.
He got a smaller margin of popular vote victory than Hillary Clinton did. So remind anyone that says he got a mandate, that if he got a mandate, then Hillary Clinton should have been president and we should have done everything she said, apparently, according to them. Right. Yep. So what they mean is a mandate by, 312, beg your pardon, big Steph fan. I'm speaking broadly because it doesn't quite matter once you pass 270. But the idea is that you get 312 versus a 1.5% win in the popular vote. It's a little off. So the idea that it's a mandate is absurd if you're not going to admit that from a voter standpoint, from a standpoint of the people, the individuals in a country. And this might be one of the big points of conversation we need to start having going forward as a defense and as an offense, I would say, in discussing the election with our friends across the aisle. One of the biggest ones is that supposedly, oddly enough, Democrats are some sort of collective communist Marxist group that believes in the value of the many over the value of the one, and individual rights don't matter, and we're against property rights and free speech and all those things on an individual level, right? That's the illusion that they pass. Meanwhile, we're the ones who are also for individual vote, making sure everybody gets their vote and everybody gets their vote counted. Because that's where we get our name. That's where the Democrats get their name from. We are for a democracy. The Republicans get it from a republic, which they think should be the ruling reason how we pick our leaders. That from an electoral college standpoint, it should be landowners and bigger, and state collectives, oddly enough, that choose the leadership. And that you can override the voters if you think they're nuts or stupid, or curiously enough, if you undermine education in your own state and then decide your voters are too stupid to pick their leaders. Fascinating. It's a great work if you can get it.
I think you fix everything once you put the 10 Commandments up in the classroom, though. I
used to be against it, but now I think all that'll do is just make them kind of go, wait a minute. Trump violates all of these. A little careful what you wish for. Yeah, you could say Soleimani deserved what he got, but how he got it was illegal, and that should be fairly clear. and that there should be better ways of achieving your geopolitical goals than just sniping a car on the way to the airport, with no one with, but I guess security guards with guns in their hands and killing people in the periphery who just happen to be pushing a cart down the street. That's just me, though. It's, unless they're in the middle of going to do something specifically awful. There's a bomb in the trunk, and you've got the trolley conundrum in front of you. Do you flip the switch and it kills one person, or do you flip the switch and it kills 20 people? Which matters? And in those situations, you can't not make a choice. You have to. That's oftentimes the difficult position a president or a leader is put in, and we understand that. This was not one of those choices. This was just an assassination of choice, essentially, right? And so the idea that somehow the Iranians would come after Trump and send squads seems, and he's like, how dare they, seems a bit silly in that regard. Like, how would they not in that regard? Not that I'm recommending it, and not that I'm for them. I'm just saying that it's a bit of, just the language around it is a bit hypocritical, it would seem. That said, Trump by no means has a mandate. Trump by no means has a runaway, a free reign over the entirety of government. And we're not the only ones that know it. Republicans know it. A good portion of Republicans in the Senate especially know it. And the ones in the House certainly know it, depending on their district, because they have to get reelected every 2 years. Senators can sit on being wrong for an interesting wedge of time. The 6-year term of a senator is curious in that it is longer than the president of the United States' term, overlapping into the term of the next president, oftentimes. And there are certain elements where we've often, I guess, ruminated, fixated on how the American voter might have a very short attention span, at least in a year and a half. Year and a half, you can forget almost everything that happened. Because especially if you've got a president like Trump, where he's just going to flood the zone with garbage all the time and overwhelm you. So eventually the complexity of the insanity makes you check out, right? There's a good portion of voters who said they didn't vote this time because they didn't know enough about Harris, but they also didn't want to have anything to do with an election with Trump in it. So their choice was not to get rid of him, but to just ignore the entire thing entirely. And that's what drove down the turnout. That's what drove down it's ultimately what caused him to lose the 50% majority. Because there were so many voters either checked out, didn't vote for president, or voted third party or wrote someone in because they were a Republican, couldn't bring themselves to vote for him. That was what that margin was. Those anti-Trump Republicans, what that margin meant, they didn't go to Harris because they were like, oh, she's going to win anyways. And they just wrote in John Bolton or something ridiculous. Yeah. And it brought him below 50% in the overall vote turnout, which again, on every margin, Donald Trump does not have a mandate in every sense. They have the smallest control of the House, I think, ever. By the time he removes 3 people and they have special elections, if those special elections automatically go Republican, they still might not go full MAGA. And they will be punching hard to make sure they do. I have no doubt. And I have no doubt that, let's say, Matt Gaetz's seat will be filled by someone equally as scummy and gross. But a couple of the others, Stefanik and, the like, they very well may be replaced by somebody a little more middle of the road because Trump has lost his attention on these races, isn't in campaign mode anymore, has his own fish to fry in terms of maybe he's just going to promote anybody who's pro Customs and Border Patrol. Maybe that's what his run will be. He'll just give his stamp and hope it carries them across the line. But that's not necessarily something he can count on. And what is Doge ultimately? What is it? Thank you, Bonnie. Shirley Chisholm was born 100 years ago today. The first woman to run for Democratic nominee in 72. That's true. Bonnie, have you seen the movie? I'm sure you have. They did a movie about her. Shirley Chisholm, that's on, I want to say it's Netflix, but it might not be. It's somebody in the chat room they all overlap at some point, but it's worth seeing if you haven't. It's very telling. It's so interesting watching the emotion of a presidential race that had no chance. None. It had no chance of winning. It was zero. But bless her for running. But the emotion of we were almost there. Everybody feels that, even in these, except for Jill Stein, who knew, she was paid to be a spoiler, but everybody else thinks they're going to win, even when they have no shot, which is why I'm running in 2028. For 2028. But we'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Hal Sparks podcast, Mega Worldwide. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts. So, right, I have to bring up this Doge nonsense real quick, because Bloomberg, I can't even believe it, but I guess you have to, because it's Bloomberg's money and he's rich or whatever. But Bloomberg has this podcast on Elon Musk called Elon Incorporated, and I don't know if the host's name is Papadopoulos. I don't think he's related to George, but I don't know how he couldn't be. So I've always been very suspect of the whole thing. But they went through kind of what they thought he could accomplish and what he couldn't accomplish. And other than the fact that they kept calling it Doge, which is annoying, they did come to terms with the fact that he's basically just pulling in people from around him, and he can't.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Oh, wait, I'll save this. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Coming back.
You're locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Well, as many of you know, ladies and gentlemen, being named after a computer, I am counting the days till the singularity reaches us, and we end up, all walking around as cyborgs. So much so that it has made me start, because it came up, I forget, I want to say it's on, maybe it's Peacock or something like that, but the entirety of the $6 Million Man is online. Now you can watch the entire series, including the original movie, because they used to do, just like Columbo and all these shows, they would start off, instead of making a pilot, they would make like a 90-minute movie of the week thing that would run on a Sunday. There was basically like 3 episodes, really get you bored in and dug into it, right? So that you'd go like, what happened, or what's going to happen after this, and then whatever. Okay, so for those of you that don't recall, and maybe you haven't, and if you get a chance, watch the opening credits. Like, we all think we have them memorized, right? Well, Steve Austin, astronaut. We can rebuild. Yeah, right. All that stuff. Okay. Does anybody remember what the brain interface on the $6 Million Man was called? And it's probably a dead giveaway just even bringing it up. Because they don't talk about it, but it shows up in the opening credits in the details along the side of him.
Please tell me it's Doge.
Nope. It's called Neuralink.
No way.
Yeah, it's called Neuralink. It is.
Clever.
Yeah, in the eye, and if you look at the graphic where it shows his eye, it says bionic Neuralink, and on the other one it just says Neuralink. What I'm trying to tell you is that Elon Musk doesn't have any original ideas, and everything he got is just a kid with a playground and a lot of money telling people who increasingly have more available science around them to get stuff done for him. In the same way, if you've ever heard Bill Barr's bit about, and say that 10 times fast, about Steve Jobs, Bill Burr used to do, did I say Bill Barr? Bill Burr. Bill Burr used to do a bit about, it wasn't even a bit, it was almost like a talk show piece about what was the big deal about Steve Jobs. He would just order a bunch of nerds to get out of it. He was basically like a nerd tyrant. Right? He would just go, I want all my songs to fit in something the size of my wallet. Get on it, right? That's and that was his impersonation of Steve Jobs. Now, Steve Jobs was initially a designer of hardware. He actually did the physical design of both the UI and all these things, and was working on the code initially with Wozniak and all those other guys. In the same way that Bill Gates was, started out as a programmer. Elon Musk didn't. He was just a rich dude who venture capitaled his way into PayPal and then used the money they all made off that to buy Tesla, which was already a going exchange, and would never have taken off. And I cannot stress this enough for people who are listening. Would never have taken off unless Barack Obama hadn't given him a bunch of money. The reality is that during the bailout in 2009. The Obama administration, in an attempt to move us along on climate change, gave electric car companies a boost in the bailout, which, by the way, Trump was against, but for the big three, largely because he thought they would recover magically and he wanted to buy the dip. All of his friends were saying, let it crash and you can buy Ford for pennies. And then it'll just go back up because it's Ford and everybody will have to make it go back, which was never the case. It is never a fait accompli immediately. And so if it was not, yes, thank you, Bill Burr, thank you. If it was not for Barack Obama, most of us would not even know Elon Musk's name. He really...
Thanks, Obama.
The irony. Yeah, for real. I'm just saying.
The ultimate thanks, Obama.
And it isn't, and again, I don't blame Obama for trying to, and he didn't, that wasn't the only company that he helped. It was just the one that was farthest along, right? Tesla was further along than everybody else. Now it's backed up. Now it's basically, there's this back and forth between it and BYD, this Chinese company, and they're just bouncing back and forth, stealing from each other. And that's why they all catch fire. That's another thing for another day. But there are a bunch of other electric car companies that are eventually starting to make their way forward. I think the other one's called Rivian, and then of course each of the big three has their hybrids, which are and will be the biggest sellers over the next little bit. And then Rivian is is I guess the next in line to compete. Those are the ones I see on the street the most. They have those weird, like, pill-shaped headlights. If you ever see an electric car driving, and they got the pill-shaped headlights. I saw my first one the other day. Yes, and Aptera is genius, and we love Aptera around here, and we love the people at Aptera. It is a solar car, and it's when they finally have their production model out, it's going to be like one big machined piece, and it's amazing. And as a commuter vehicle, it'll be fantastic. It'll be somewhere between, those three-wheeled cars that Mr. Bean used to drive off the road in all those old episodes. They had these. Oh, I thought you were talking about like the weird three-wheel, like it's not a motorcycle, it's just a dangerous car. It's a giant tricycle. So the Aptera charges 40 miles a day. So you can commute in that car just basically using solar and maybe some plug backup, depending on what kind of traffic you're running into and that kind of stuff, and what the environment is where you are. That said, we're about to lap into where small startup companies will be able to basically slingshot their way around the big companies, and all the advantages that Musk got in the early days will mean less and less. And part of what it seems like he is doing with this Doge nonsense is trying to guarantee market share and positioning. And there are some rumblings in Trump world apparently that he sees Trump on a hard fade and wants to claim the mantle of MAGA for himself, that he wants to be the heir apparent of MAGA. Now,
isn't he dark? What is he, dark goth MAGA? What did he say he was?
Yes, he said he was dark MAGA. Yes, dork MAGA is what we call it. But that said, it seems logical that this, that he thinks this is going to happen. It certainly looks like it from his behavior. And it seems to be concerning Trump world that that's his behavior. They seem to be a bit nervous that he's the guest that won't leave at Mar-a-Lago, and that he is making himself indispensable in terms of the mythology of the next Trump presidency. And because he's actually got money, unlike Trump, it won't matter if Trump blames him for everything. Most of the time, Trump can blame everybody for his failures because they're in a less, he's punching down essentially all the time. Yes, Kathy, he's up against Leonard Leo and gang. This is absolutely true. They will, but there are a bunch of people jockeying to be, in charge of MAGA once Trump departs this earth mentally or physically, which seems to be like we're on the cusp of it. And especially there seems to be this dark crystal Skeksis gathering around the bed energy at Mar-a-Lago right now. If you remember that when this?
Oh yeah, they scared the crap out of me.
Well, remember when the one who had been in charge was dying, and he's in the bed, and they're like trying to get the scepter from him, and then Chamberlain grabbed it, and the other guy challenges him, trial by stone, and all that kind of stuff. But they're all
wow. No, I don't remember any of that.
Really, you don't remember that? Oh my gosh, I was scarred by that. Yeah. But the point is that if you listen to Boris Epstein's fight with Lutnick, his fight with Besant, his fight with Elon Musk, they got into a shouting match in the dining room there, that these folks apparently, to quote my dear friend Judy Toll, who had one of the most genius insights, I think, and I will paraphrase it for a way that can fit on radio. She goes, my shrink and I, this used to be her joke, my shrink and I figured out what my problem is. Apparently, I think I'm a piece of crap that the world revolves around. And she didn't use the word crap, but you get the point. And it is, there's a level of genius insight in that is very impressive. And that seems to be that the people are in Trump's orbit know that Trump is a piece of crap, but the world revolves around him. And so they are all fighting to satellite him. They are all fighting to be in the orbit. And I guess the only question is, when he goes, does it supernova and blow everything apart, or does it black hole and suck everything in? But nothing, there's no salvageable version of this insofar as anyone can see. There is no, the idea that Ivanka is going to run, or that Don Jr. has the charm to take over this stuff is an absurdity. As a matter of fact, both he and Eric will more than likely be in a fairly horrible rich kid spiral for the next God knows how many years. If you don't believe me, ask Kimberly Guilfoyle. That said, who apparently is as persona non grata as Melania is these days. But I think the key to all this is that there is only currently one, and I'm sure he will work to change this. There's only one of Elon's businesses that is not either started by or kept afloat by government money, tax dollars. One. And that would be the site formerly known as Twitter. And that is why I would say to everyone, get out now. Don't look back. Like we gave everybody the Thanksgiving Day, deadline to try and pack your stuff. Get out for a couple of reasons. One is there is every piece of interaction you do, whether you pay to be on there or whether you are just on there yelling, Elon Musk gets to monetize your activity on there. If you pay for it, he takes your money. He tells advertisers, look at the engagement. People are paying to engage on my site. Therefore, you should bring your advertising dollar to my site. Okay? Which is absurd. Get out now. And increasingly, journalists and news sites are bugging out for Blue Sky. And yes, I got out already. I'm no longer on there. I deactivated my account. I have downloaded all my content. I haven't seen
any ads on Blue Sky yet. Am I just looking in the wrong place?
No, you won't for a time being. They're going to have to at some point. But even those, they've only got a 20-person team running the whole thing, and increasingly because of AI.
That. Isn't that nuts?
Yeah, well, I mean, it shouldn't be if most people are policing their own feed. You have more control over what you shut down, so you don't have to block stuff. Right. All they really have to focus on, and they can even outsource that, and they can talk to the FBI and other stuff about sex trafficking, human trafficking, drugs, all that kind of stuff. The stuff that attacked.
That's who I talk to.
Snapchat was, basically their biggest problem was fentanyl. For a while was like fentanyl trafficking on Snapchat because it only stays up for a short amount of time, so it's even harder for them to police their stuff because it immediately erases. Malcolm said, "Wait till when?" No. I love Malcolm. No. Okay. He said, "Wait till 1/20/25 and leave X and do it en masse. That'll really mess him up." As long as he gets out, fine. But up until that point, you're putting money in his pocket. The other thing is if you don't pay to be on there and you're just there interacting, he can go to advertisers to go look at all these people who are interacting. Even when a third of the accounts on the site were bots, allegedly, when he took it over. Now, the conservative estimate is 60%. Which doesn't mean that 60% of your interactions on the site are you talking to bots, you arguing with bots. It means that 60% of the accounts are bots, meaning that on any given day, 100% of your interactions, unless it's a DM with a friend, could be you yelling at bots. And what does Elon Musk do? He goes to advertisers and goes, look, I built this arena where people come in and they punch robots all day long. And the robots never get tired. And these idiots show up every single day to punch robots. Robots that I direct the conversation on. So, again, that's the only company he has that is not kept afloat by government money. And by the time this whole Doge business starts, he very well may put a thing in that Congress people to have their legitimized account on there will have to pay to have their through some sort of government program for verification, and just have Trump write him a big check through some department hidden somewhere in the defense budget or something to verified account to backfill the money it takes for all the details and all the storage and all that kind of stuff, that the government owes this private company a fee. And one of the first things the Doge caucus will do is not cut money, but cut checks. They will cut checks to Elon Musk. So the sooner you get out, the better. We got to take a break. We'll come back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Blue Sky. At Blue Sky, by the way, I'm at halsparks.com.
Hal follows me.
I do. Close your drapes. You should close your drapes, I'm just saying.
You like what you see.
Well, I mean, it depends on which drapes we're talking about.
May not.
Because when you walk around in that hospital gown when they let you out, on leave or whatever it is from the mental institution, and you know,
mental institution.
They let you walk around in the robe. You know, you're allowed to wear pants here. I know.
It's okay. I know I'm allowed to wear pants.
Yeah.
We're back in 20.
20 seconds?
Mm-hmm. You know it. Oh, man. Why do I always forget to hit start on Instagram? It's insane.
Now back to Hal Sparks on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Yeah. Now we're back. And
I think I heard ACDC behind that. Oh, my God.
Almost. So you got to be careful. I don't know. I think possibly. I don't know. Maybe it was just
maybe they talked over it enough.
Hopefully, we don't get bumped. That said, one of the things about Blue Sky is that journalists are finally making the jump, which is really where a lot of people have gone to Twitter in the past for breaking news, right? And as soon as that breaking news is available in the same relative format anywhere else, boom. People are jumping, and according to I forget which is it. I have to scroll back and find this. Ashton Pittman, who's a news editor and reporter who joined Blue Sky. He was the only Mississippi journalist he knew using it until about 5 weeks ago. Now there are at least 15 of them on the major ones, and he says even though Blue Sky allegedly has a lot fewer people on it, the engagement is 20 times higher than Twitter. So
high.
Because it's real people. It's actual human beings, God forbid. So that said, I'm announcing that I've started the first draft. I'm going to pass it around to a couple of friends this week. That I've drafted a bill for the California and New York legislatures. I assume Washington won't be that far behind, Washington State. And perhaps even D.C. they could do it locally. And it would have some weight, that bots must be registered online, that they're in terms of service. So people need to know specifically. They need to know if it can be known, meaning that if you intentionally put a bot online or the site knows that exists, that people have the right to know if you're talking to a bot. Now, if you're a company that has bots online, like customer service bots or whatever, or this is the Coca-Cola bot that posts on there, and there's not an actual human running the account, I don't think anybody has a problem with that. And if you like the product, you'll follow it. If a movie is coming out and they put a bot as part of their marketing thing in charge of contests and all that kind of stuff, or details or whatever, you might follow it because you're a huge Twilight fan or Hunger Games or whatever those things are. You'll follow it anyways. You're not looking for the individual. Most of the time we are aware that teams run those things. Right? Most of the time you're like, I know if I tweet them back, I'm not talking to the same person I might have tweeted back a month ago.
For a second, I thought you said teens. Like, really? How do we know they're that young?
Well, by their interaction. Also, you're frozen and frowning, and I'm not quite sure why, but I think it's adorable.
Oh, no.
Yeah, hold on. I know what I'll do. I will refresh and see if that pops you back in, and hopefully
and I restarted my camera.
Oh, okay. Well, then way to go. I'm trying to do it. Okay, we'll see. I'll switch over to this one and then back and see if it does. Nope. There we go. Properties.
I'm trying here. Video
Okay, that's
source.
right. No, don't.
Right.
Yeah, you're frozen on there again a little bit. It might just be an attack by the deep state. Also, can I remind everyone, if I may, and I think I can, that the crucial thing to remember about all of this nonsense as we watch the news play out and people start overreacting or perhaps in some cases underreacting, who can say, that people will indeed, I think they have to recognize that Doge, as they are calling it, Doge, as I am calling it, there's an old-fashioned word. There's a phrase called deep state. Unelected bureaucrats, I think, is the phrase. The derp state works. I'm a big fan of this. The derp state. But the primary thing you need to remember is this is bureaucracy. That Trump has set up a committee to look into the money that he can share and that he can, his slush fund element of it. What he can, Johnny's. We're trying to get Johnny back in. Johnny, are you there? Can I hear you?
Yeah, I'm going to reconnect.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, you can do that real quick, and I'll keep chit chatting and pop you back in. But yeah. Doge is deep state for MAGA. That is exactly right, Paul. And it is ultimately simply another layer of bureaucracy. There he is. Look at that. He's back. On the live stream at infotainmentwars.com. Share the show, like, subscribe, Venmo, etc., etc., etc. The one upside, I suppose, that we can look forward to in the if Trump follows through on his stuff is that my show will be completely tax-free because it's all tips all the time. That's right. The show only exists on tips. So I don't know. It's not like I'm salaried by you guys. This is just, if you Venmo me or any of those kind of things, I'm assuming that by April,
I will hand my 1099 to the IRS and go, these are all tips, my man.
Yeah, sorry. Oops. The ultimate, idea of this Doge committee and everybody jumping, what a new and novel idea. It is exactly what all presidents do in some form or another when they bring in a group of people, advisors and otherwise, sometimes donors, sometimes people they actually have in the cabinet. That's what their advisors usually are. And what they do is they just run through whatever discretionary elements of the budget that they can get their hands on, and they either cut it to try and save themselves some money for later, or they boost it to reinforce whatever their voter base was, or fulfill some of their promises. Those kind of things. Yes, right. It's a novel idea. Also, by the way, share the show on Blue Sky if you would. You can, whatever format you're in, if you're on Facebook, pop it over there. If you're on, if you're watching on YouTube, throw it up on your Blue Sky just for the heck of it. You can just grab a sharing link and pop it in as and throw it in. It's fabulous. So a bunch of the people that are allegedly he's bringing in. And I, Peter Schiff, I guess, who is, yet another rich. We'll just call him another rich. I love this quote. I hate to rain on this parade, but the Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, is not a real department. Schiff noted in a recent post on the former site, the acronym is a nod to the cryptocurrency Musk has frequently championed. Also, it's the inversion of EGOD, which is for all you maggots out there who are thinking that Trump is all Jesus-y. He has got the guy who wants to put a chip in 2 billion people's brains whispering into his empty head via his crusty old gunky ears. And his little term Doge is e-God. It is your God will be a computer. That computers will have godlike power. That's where that comes from. Full stop. Okay, it's a joke, and it's backwards because Satan. Just letting you know, because when he came up with a lot of this stuff. He was trying to, be all, edgelord about it. Schiff is apparently a supporter of him, but he says it exists. Doge exists outside of government, has no authority to do anything like any one of a number of independent think tanks that already exist. It's free to make any recommendations it wants, and the government is free to ignore them all. And no Democrats will vote in favor of these things, and with a 1-vote majority in the House, shrug. I'm just saying. The idea that they're going to be able to tear everything down and get rid of even the Department of Education. And by the way, if there's some cuts, I would recommend that if Democrats know that they're going to be cutting in red states, let them have at it. Let them feel the pain that they have chosen to feel, because they voted for this. If red states voted for the cuts in the Department of Education, they should be the first recipients.
All kinds of benefits.
That's right. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. Philip Ittner will be joining us from Ukraine. Lots of movement there as well. And apparently, we're not, unlike, I guess, what Joe Rogan says, we're not in World War III, or we are, and it's no big deal. I don't know which it is, but both are stupid. We'll be back.
It would be wild if this was World War III, and I'd be like, oh, I survived World War III so far.
Well, I mean, you can argue, I would make the case that World War III was the Cold War. It had, in some cases, depending on where your focus is, a death toll equal to World War I over the course of its couple of decades, 3 or 4 decades.
Sure.
It was just spread out all over the place instead of one
War
fight
Games
zone.
Count?
The movie War Games?
Yeah, it's one of the wars.
No, it does not, because it never happened. It was a giant game of tic-tac-toe. And there's Phil. Let me bring him in as well.
Yeah, Phil. Looking good, my man.
Can we hear him? Can he hear us?
He's
don't
not
hear you, Phil.
making sounds yet. His mouth is not moving unless he's like grunting and belching, and I just can't see it.
Nope.
Or hear it.
Phil, can you hear us? Okay, we can't hear you, though. We need a mic coming
Not
from
yet.
you. We don't hear anything coming yet.
I have faith. He's got that.
It's not great, but how's that?
There you go. Yep. There we go. And let's see if I can bring it down. And, whoops. Let's see what's here. Guess 2.
Listen to Phil.
Here we go. Okay. And come on. Come on. Where is it? Where's this? Refresh. Paste. Okay. Oh, there he is. Okay, good. Now it worked. Excellent. Take a moment. And hi, chat room. Hit that like while you're at it. It boosts us in the algorithm and annoys maggots. Oh, yeah. That's what I was looking for. Yep. There we go. If I gotta say, I don't know, let me make sure this other window opens up properly. There you go. You're not Boston Pride, and you're not Tara Dublin. Hold on. There we go. That's Phil. Oh, there we go. And then we take this. There you go. A piece of court stuff right there. Boop. Excellent.
15 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You, just for the record, everybody, you do not own your X account.
No.
According to Musk, he filed in court this week.
You're listening to the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Plus face little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome back. So Philip Bittner is joining us live from Ukraine. He is back in Kyiv, and there's obviously a lot to cover in that realm, no doubt. But on top of that, Phil, first of all, how you doing? What's it like to be back in Kyiv? I think is the primary first question. Then we will also farm questions from the chat at infotainmentwars.com on the Facebook page and the like. Send them to Johnny Million, and we'll get them to Phil, and he can answer them as well.
Well, considering the possibility that I'm going to die here has significantly increased, not so great, Hal.
Well, I mean, please expand on that. Other than the fact that they're increasingly sending more attacks.
They're gonna hit us. They're gonna hit us. They're gonna hit us before the inauguration. They're gonna hit us with this new Orishnik hypersonic missile that carries a multitude of warheads. They're gonna hit us. Putin has said as much. He said he's going to, that the potential was high that he would hit downtown Kiev, which is where I live. I could die. I could be dead very soon. Like immediately.
Well, yeah. That's
sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
but
no.
That's
I
where we are.
understand. Yep.
That's where we are. I mean, literally any minute now. I have a section of my apartment, which, by the way, you'll notice.
No lights, right? So your power is out right now?
Nope. Olga is not lit up. Olga is in the darkness. I have a section of my apartment that is kind of sandbagged out with my flak jacket and my helmet. I slept there last night because the warhead that, or the missile that the Russians have developed allows them to hit Kiev in a way that they previously were not able to do. And that is to say, hit specific downtown command and control parts of Ukrainian government.
Right.
And I live close to those guys. And it's not precise, so I could get it. And so the threat to my life is significantly increased.
Well, on that note, until such time as the world stops spinning, we will behave as if it intends to spin on.
Here. Let's talk about stuff. There's plenty to talk about.
Absolutely. The primary one being that, and again, I know that the concern being that he would do this before the inauguration in theory, but I feel like that would create a jump. Does he think that would settle it with Trump, that this horrible thing had to happen and it's basically done anyways?
Well, he does it. He does it. He does it under a Biden administration. Then Trump comes in and makes some sort of peace. Quotation marks.
Yeah, but if they wiped out the Capitol,
threatening Zelensky, and that's presuming that Zelensky is still alive.
Right. Right.
I don't know if he's in the city. I don't know if he's in the city currently. I don't know if he is at a secure location outside or inside Kiev. One would hope so. But this weapon is a game changer for them in the sense that it is hypersonic, and it does come down with a multitude of warheads. So he can hit a whole bunch of stuff downtown and kind of shotgun it. One would think.
Yeah, I understand materially. I'm trying to get my head around it tactically, because even still, they've said all kind. I mean, they've almost joked openly about hitting Berlin with nukes as well. And I suppose we're farther along with this idea that we're closer to World War III than we've ever been is always true. If we ever have one, every day we're closer to it simply by the tick of the clock. But
that's right. We certainly could have made some different decisions along the way, and we've discussed this extensively. I mean, I was very forgiving of the Biden administration because I was hoping for a Harris win, and to aggravate or escalate the conflict, which would have given Trump ammunition,
leverage.
I understood that mentality. Mentality. Hindsight is 2020. But we are past that point. Trump will have a second term. Harris will not be in the White House, and so Putin has the ability to strike at us while he's still the Biden administration, so that in any kind of negotiation that happens under a Trump administration, we'll take that into consideration. And clearly the American public, the majority, not the, well, look at that. Surprise, surprise, we get power back.
Power came on. There you go.
A little bit early, about an hour earlier than we expected it. But if we do get, as we move into a Trump administration, if he were to hit us now, before Trump takes office, it would play into both Trump and Putin's hands.
Yeah,
I think that's going to happen.
Okay. I hope not. And I would say that there is some semblance.
I live here. I hope not, certainly.
But I genuinely think there's an element of, if he does, just because he's out the door, it's, this whole idea that Trump was going to solve it, 24 hours after the election, or that they're having conversations and that they get along well and blah, blah, blah. There's a huge difference in, against, hitting regions around Kursk or something like that, in a devastating manner once they've cleared their own people out, and just doing a big wipe of that, and hitting the capital of Kyiv in the waning days of the Biden administration, because Biden is president until the 20th. And if there was ever going to be a situation where he declares an overall emergency, or takes the powers of the presidency to the extreme, he'd be the guy to do it in that regard. Who knows what's in Putin's head, if anything.
I don't know, maybe. The Biden administration has acted on a policy of non-escalation.
But then they just escalated. They just escalated, technically speaking, by allowing them to strike within Russia in the Kursk region.
After the election.
Right. And he's still president.
Right after the election, when there's fear of Trump using it for political capital on the campaign. Which kind of plays into my mentality of how this whole thing has played out. And again, I don't necessarily blame the Biden. Some of my fellow kind of the people who got skin in the game and who are Ukrainian, either they're here in Ukraine or they are Ukrainian watchers, or who understand the threat, the real threat of what's happening here. Many of them have been hypercritical of the Biden administration because it wasn't just like, give them everything. I have always said, I understand that an escalation could be counterproductive because it would provide, grist for the mill for the Trump administration, for the Trump campaign. We're past that point. So I think that's why we got the extended range for the missiles. That's why we got the landmines. That's why we're talking about more money. I suspect before January 20th, we'll have some other thing that the Biden administration will give to, again, there's two parts of the equation of hindsight is 2020. It's the clarity of 2020, but it's also having the ability to have hindsight, which no human being has.
Yeah.
So, okay, you did it wrong. You played. I don't blame you.
You
did it wrong.
They wanted more Bill Barr, less Merrick Garland in that regard, I guess. But yes, and
had Harris gotten in, we could be looking at this entire conflict in a very different way. But she didn't. Okay, so we deal with the reality that is. And the second that he lost the election, it was attack 'em as far as you want to go, and it was landmines. And now it's more money. So, okay, there's a lot that can be done.
Yeah.
Before
between
January.
now and then. Yep.
However, having said that, currently, at any moment, I could be hit by a missile. They have the capability of doing that. And we have not properly, in my opinion, deterred them from doing that. That is neither here nor there. But that is how I am living currently, and that is how many. I mean, I've been privileged to be in the Capitol because it has been the most defended part of the country, rightfully so.
Right.
That is no longer the case. This weapon, if he hits Krashatik, it's our Krashatik is Main Street. Okay, Kiev Main Street. At one end of it, you have the Parliament. You have the presidential palace. Halfway down the road, the way of it, you have the mayor's office. There is the Independence Square. If you go up the hill from the Parliament and the presidential palace, you have the symbol of the motherland, the woman with the statue and the shield. I don't think he'll try and hit that because it's right next door to the Lavra, which I've always said is a deterrent for him because the Lavra is the birthplace and where many of Ukraine, Orthodox Ukrainian and Russian Orthodox saints are buried. It's sacred ground. It would be like a Muslim, whether you're Shia or Sunni, hitting the Kaaba in Mecca, Medina.
Right.
Or, an American Jew somehow getting in the White House and launching a nuke at the Wailing Wall. These things are essential to the identity of Slavic Orthodoxy. And it's very, very important to them. So this weapon, this is why I have always felt myself relatively safe here in Kiev, because you can't carpet bomb Kiev for fear of hitting the Lavra, and obviously you can't drop a nuke for fear of hitting the Lavra. But if you have a weapon that has multiple warheads, you can hit a whole bunch of stuff and keep the stuff that's sacred to those who follow Moscow relatively safe.
Yeah, I okay, and agreed. Let's take a break. When we come back, I would argue that I think Lviv or Odessa are in more danger because they don't have those things, and it's not seen as attacking the capital in terms of him parsing favor with Trump. And if you leave the capital intact, Trump will feel safer about that idea that you're somehow engaged in warlike diplomacy. But if you wipe out the capital, all bets are off from the entirety of Europe. Like the amount of stuff that flows in, Europe just they unplug as well, and we're in a totally different game. I really do believe so. That said,
we'll talk about it on the other side.
Yeah, we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the HAL Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. This is, I think the parallels from a diplomatic standpoint, and those that are, do not know history are doomed to repeat it in terms of a Democratic presidency and the situation in Ukraine. There are a lot of parallels to Clinton talking to the Ukrainians back then and saying, give up your nukes and we'll protect you, and in this similar kind of slow roll of that. There's a lot of parallels.
Well, also back when we thought that we could work with Moscow and that there would be progress in Moscow. I mean, Clinton couldn't predict Putin. And so the idea was, we'll find a way to have a peaceful negotiation with Moscow, so Kiev will not need its nuclear weapons, or Kiev, not being part of the Soviet Union, and return those to Moscow. You couldn't predict. Well, you could. Those of us who were paying attention.
You're locked into the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Welcome back. So we're covering the situation in Ukraine, and of course Phil is right in the center of it. And this ability to somehow reach Kyiv, and whether or not that is something that Putin will do from a tactical standpoint is beyond our knowing, but is also it has been a practical possibility the entirety of the time. But it is
a reality.
Agreed. In terms of the rest of the situation, though, oddly enough, and maybe this is fueling that feeling, or maybe it's pushing back against that feeling, but the Russians have now crested over the 2,000 a day mark in terms of deaths. That they're losing at this point over 2,000 soldiers a day. Before, we used to talk regularly about how amazing it was that they were using 1,000 to 1,100. They would lose that many, and the sort of the reality of that circumstance. Now, increasingly, we're seeing a situation where they are hitting 2,000 plus every single day. And partly it may be that they're just doing more meat waves because they feel like these North Korean soldiers are fodder, and they're just like padding up the numbers that they're sending in, and therefore the 200 or so extra that have pushed them up over 2,000 are these North Korean soldiers, or perhaps some of these Syrian soldiers that they've started bringing in, or some of the ones from the conscripts from Dagestan and that kind of that pushback. Again, lowering the number increasingly of fighting forces around the world. So there were reports this week that Russians retreated out of Syria in a couple of areas, and the Syrian army reclaimed a bunch of these folks and killed.
They're in Aleppo.
Yeah, they're in Aleppo, right? And it's so bad that the Russians have started doing propaganda that those are Ukrainians, because people can't tell the difference between Ukrainian and Russian when they hear people talking, and so they're assuming that those people will just buy it. Right?
I haven't seen that, really.
Yeah, that they're posting the and this is,
of course they would.
This, par for the course, but they are posting this idea that
right.
Yeah.
And here's another topic I mean, look, I've been to Syria a lot of times, and and the whole Russian influence and the Russian infrastructure on the ground there is something that I could talk about in generalities, but it's not something I really know 100% about. But we do need to talk about Tbilisi right now at this hour. And I'm curious whether or not Americans are seeing this in any news facility. No. Johnny, have you heard anything about street protests in the capital of the Republic of Georgia?
I have not.
Right. Have you heard about the retreat of Russian soldiers and Assad's forces in Aleppo? Like that was more acute. That's happened in the last, I want to say, 72 hours. Right?
That's crazy. It's crazy.
And that is enormous.
Yeah. There was a whole I was there. I was in Syria during that whole period when, Syria and northern Iraq, Kurdistan, when all of that was happening. And we were fixated on it. And now Aleppo is either fallen or in the process of falling. And we're not hearing it anywhere.
According to reports,
according to reports, it has fallen, but I'm always cautious.
Sure. But there's plenty of footage coming from Russian channels. Of soldiers that have left, of the stuff that is being claimed, of people,
Aleppo's fallen. Yeah. I'm just being cautious.
Yeah, sure.
Tbilisi, which is a cornerstone of Russia's security infrastructure, because it's the soft underbelly where the Caucasus Peninsula, which consists of Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia, has always been this major focus for the Russian Empire and for its strategic standing. And there are running street battles in Tbilisi, the country's capital. There are tens, not tens, hundreds of thousands. I haven't checked what the latest number is. We're out last night. We're out tonight. There's been a false election, an election that was manipulated by Moscow, obviously, clearly manipulated by Moscow. And you have hundreds of thousands of Georgians on a country of 4.7 million people. If the 0.7, you're going to have to give me a little bit of leeway on. But 4 million people, not a big country, small country, strategically important, small country, small population. Hundreds of thousands of people are in the process of running street battles with the police because they feel that their election was stolen. Hundreds of thousands of them, if they're willing to go to the streets and engage in battles on the streets, don't you think they went to the ballot box? No, it was manipulated. It was controlled. And it is yet another example of Moscow's sense of capacity to do these kind of things, because there will not be a response from the United States because we are so involved internally. The Biden administration is doing what it can, certainly here. And I know that there are both American interests in Georgia and more European, frankly, involved in kind of the condemnation of the incoming government that was elected in quotation marks. But there is a lot. I mean, there's the collapse of the ruble. There is so much going on right now.
That's for the next. We'll talk about that in the next break or whatever. But the ruble.
Yeah, you want to do that?
We'll talk about the next segment. Extraordinary.
But do not dismiss what is happening in Georgia. It's really important.
It's huge. And again, I don't know, like, people don't recognize that. Like, here, I'll bring this up so just people can get a glimpse of this on the live stream. But Russian and Syrian jets are bombing Aleppo to drive back the rebels who have taken the majority of the city. This is 24 hours old, so they've already taken more of it. They basically routed the city. I'm showing a picture online for those of you listening on the radio, but of the rebels in front of the Aleppo citadel, which is the big fortress in the center of town. They took it. It looks exactly like you would expect. It looks like an old-fashioned castle meant to repel force. Yes, it is a Crusader castle. Crusades. Right. So this is extraordinary, and it's all while the Tsar slept. I mean, effectively, you can argue that this is what happens when the Tsar is distracted with an opportunity war that he put forward, and that he insists is necessary. You've only got so many resources, as anybody who's ever played Risk will tell you, and if you start depleting them in a bunch of other places, everybody's going to take their shot. And that's exactly what happened in Aleppo. This is being seen as a huge rout for Bashar al-Assad. And you know who's a big fan of Bashar al-Assad? Tulsi Gabbard. Boy, her job just got really complicated. If you'll recall, she was one of the Assad suck-ups that they're putting forward. This really complicates the conversation, around, if she makes it to the, to an actual hearing. These things that are happening.
The guys who are taking Aleppo are not the alliance of the guys that are taking Aleppo are not great people.
No, they're terrible.
They're
the irony.
Pretty horrible.
On moral levels, they would be on Russia's side. They're anti-woman. They're anti-gay. They're brutally repressive.
Right.
The enemy of my friend is kind of a friend too, because we're enemies with everybody. That's the Ruskamir problem. The enemy of my friend is a future friend.
The only guys that I ever spent any time with in that part of the world who I appreciated and who I thought could benefit the region were either some of the kind of modernist Iraqis or the Kurds.
Yeah.
And we abandoned both of them.
Yep.
We abandoned both of them. So these guys aren't great. Some of them are Daesh, which is,
old-fashioned Al-Qaeda. Yeah, and
Al-Qaeda with a new jersey.
Right.
They're not great guys.
Nope.
But no,
the irony, though. Well, we got to take a break.
Let's talk about Assad guys or the Russians.
Let's talk about on the other side of the break, because you talk about how the U.S. has dealt with this for a very long time of having to make strange bedfellows or side with the least worst in a situation. Russia seems to be tied up in that mess in 4 different areas right now, live beyond Ukraine. And there's no way out. There's no way out for them. We could pack our stuff and go home in a lot of cases, and did. Afghanistan's a great example of that. They cannot, because they are shoring up the actual government. They have business alliances internally, oligarchically, with the leadership of these countries. And if they leave, it all falls apart. Their hidden money, their hidden gold, it all goes away. So we got to take a break. We'll come back right after this, and we'll talk a little bit about the fall of the ruble, which I think is, again, a shocking news story nobody has heard about. We'll be back.
Not enough.
Yeah.
Okay, now that I have power back, I'm going to switch over to my broadband. So if you lose me, don't panic.
Okay.
The chat is very concerned about you, and they love you very much.
Yes, they're worried about you, and they were, and he's gone.
Oh,
It's right.
And that's what he thinks about it. He's like, I'm out of here. Fuck
I'm
these
out.
guys.
Yeah, yeah. There he is.
Hey!
All good.
Welcome back to the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So one of the storylines that we've talked about over the last little bit certainly has a lot to do with the ruble and the ridiculous story that we keep getting told about the BRICS currency and all this nonsense, and just this sales pitch that comes out of the far left and the far right, this overlapping horseshoe of madness that they talk about how weak and how unbelievably weak the dollar is, even though it's worth more than $1, and how strong the ruble is, no matter how bad the sanctions are.
Yes, right. And how strong the union is of the BRICS nations. Did you see him? Did you see Vladimir Putin in Kazakhstan? Did you see that incident? I love this so much. If you haven't seen it, please let me tell you the story.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
No, I have not. Go ahead.
Okay. So Putin goes to Kazakhstan, which is one of the few places he can go to without getting arrested, and which was a former Soviet Union member state. And he goes there and he says, look at the great ties that we have with Kazakhstan. You know, everybody speaks Russian, and it's just like it was during the Russian Empire. So then the Kazakh president, who's in the press conference with him, answers him in Kazakh.
Oh.
Yeah. No, look, hey, we are in trouble in Ukraine. Make no bones about it. We are in trouble. Yeah. But they're in trouble too. And no more so in their currency, in their economy. You want to talk about the ruble, you know, it's at, what is it? Last I saw 115, 113 to the dollar.
Yeah. I mean, it's vacillating. They're trying to pump shore it up by basically there's so little of it. Again, their economy is so much smaller than ours. Again, it's about the size of Italy's, that you can, if you shot an oligarch in the head and took all of his money and put it back into circulation, you could boost the currency by a point for about 3 days. And that's what they do, essentially. They don't kill them, but they take everything. And so they've been grabbing all this stuff and throwing it on, in, and then they burn it all. And again, are they on a war footing financially, and is their economy based on that? Sure. Is it actually going to benefit them long term in the 4 other places they are currently at war, including Georgia, which they don't count, in the same way that we kind of forgot about Afghanistan and Iraq like they didn't exist, or those kind of things, and almost treated them like Okinawa. That's different than Georgia. That's different than Kazakhstan's relationship with them. That's different than Syria. It's certainly different than all the places they're engaged in Africa, for God's sake, which again is a horrifying chapter that the American news refuses to open. That's it. Yeah, the Kazakh backlash. No, this is, by the way, after they installed, because we went through that whole thing like right about the time of the war. There was a mild uprising that may or may not have been fomented specifically by Russia, and then they sent in the heroes to protect the leadership, and then they deposed the leadership, and then instead of following the leader like Tokayev was supposed to, he jailed the guy he replaced instead of just making him security official, and took the place over. And you could tell by Tokayev, by the way, that he is more Kazakh ethnically, which is like this bridge between Chinese and the Turks that has existed for a long time, almost, for genetically speaking, that this is a mix of cultures and a mix of people. He looks much more Chinese than he looks, Eastern European, certainly, unlike the previously.
I love Central Asia.
Yeah,
one of my favorite places. Love Central Asia.
The guy he replaced looked like somebody right out of the Kremlin. And that's how it used to be run. And it's very distinct. These are very distinctly different looking human beings. And it means something to the people.
Similarly, in Georgia, you have a guy by the name of Ivanishvili. Ivan. And then, Georgian names end in Ivili. Just like Armenian names, Mosekian, for example, or Akian. They end in Georgia. It's Ishvili. So all you've got, this oligarch who's been pulling the strings in Georgia, is Ivan, which is Russian as Russian can be, with Ishvili on the side. So they're trying to rebuild their empire, and they're getting pushback. And
more than pushback. Okay,
yeah,
he's doing
more than pushback.
Right, so he's doing the start of the pushing in the first place. Okay, so Tokayev's real name, his full name, if I can get this right, and it's always a bit of an issue.
Yeah, I'm sure it's something.
It's one of these really long, drawn out. Let's see if I can. His full name is Kasim Jomart Kemelovich Tokayev. Okay, Putin intentionally mispronounces it on the regular, knocking off the Jomart part, which is referential to his Tajik family. and he calls him Kamshan Ishmailovich. Yeah, so he's intentional.
An empire.
Right. It's like if you took just knocking off the SKI on a Polish name because you're all now Germans.
Right.
It would be the equivalent of that, right? It'd be calling them Steiner Stevens.
Or to be fair, on the other side of the equation, it's like going to Korea and going like, what's your name? Well, it's
Kim.
Whatever. But how shall I call you? Oh, call me Bobby.
Yeah.
No.
I'll call you Bobby. Is what it is.
Here's the thing. That always used to bother me when I went to Korea.
Of course.
But it's still a thing, and it's an example of empire. Yes. We are very uncomfortable with empire. We don't like empire. We sometimes engage in it in different ways. But we don't like it.
No, I don't.
And we ultimately dismantle it.
I'm going to push back on that because I don't think you can engage in empire unless you intend to keep it, and you do. And if you ever have plans for leaving, that's not empire. You might be engaged in some sort of like experimental democratization exercise or whatever. But unless you plan on teaching everybody English and making them all watch, episodes of Dukes of Hazzard,
and you put a governor or a potentate.
Right. You install.
I was in Iraq with Bremer. Okay.
Yeah.
That was the closest thing I have ever seen to America engaging in empire was in Iraq. And even that was
pales in comparison.
Can I say that on the radio?
Yeah.
It was not. We do not engage in empire the way that the Russians do. Mm-hmm. We engage in a form of empire in the 21st century that we're very uncomfortable with. I am uncomfortable with.
Yeah, me too.
But it does to ignore
want to do it.
Right. You marched against Iraq. I know you did. Right?
Yes.
So you're uncomfortable with it. Russians love it. It's part of their national identity. Empire is a very real thing for the people who live under Moscow's domain. And I say that with intent and precisely because it is empire. They have expanded and conquered their way into the massive landmass that they are currently. They are trying to absorb Ukraine, which is part of the cornerstone in the beginning, the birthplace of their concept of self as empire. And they are not succeeding. They have heretofore not succeeded.
Well,
we must continue to support the Ukrainians because we don't want Russia to continue to have an imperial mentality. So when people complain about proxy wars, it's not proxy war. It's we need, for the betterment of the planet, we must resist Russian empire. Sorry.
Agreed. And no, not at all. And here's what I would argue is that Trump is the most empirical president we've ever had in his language. And the way he talks about paying for security and we should keep the oil is exactly what everybody, even the Tucker Carlson allegedly, right wing side of things always talk about like how horrible that is and we shouldn't dare. And they're this weirdly anti-imperialist, libertarian, isolationist crowd, but they seem to be giving him a pass on this madness. By the way, because largely because they assume it will never happen, is because the House and the Senate will never allow it, and of course we're never going to do it because it's a war crime and it's just stupid and we don't need it anyways. Like the idea that we're going to go to war for rare earth minerals now is the next big phase of things, which is incredibly stupid because literally America, congratulations, by the way, we have the largest lithium deposit in the world and we just opened the world's second largest rare earth mineral mine right here outside of Las Vegas, ladies and gentlemen, just 45 minutes from here. They took an old mine that was going under and it turns out it's the second most productive rare earth mineral site on Earth. Don't need Russia, don't need China, don't need them to go drilling in some impoverished country in Africa and start digging stuff up just to throw cobalt our way. Don't need it. And we could do it more environmentally. By the way, that site is the single most environmentally conscious mining site on the planet, bar none. Thank you, Joe Biden. because they gave them the shore up money to get that started. That is just true. Enjoy. That said, we are removing ourselves from the need for resources from places, so there will be less of a desire in some cases to deal with these things.
I also question whether or not Trump is truly an isolationist, or is he more of a kind of imperialist? He just wants everybody to dance to his tune.
I think
he wants America.
He's a moron and an egomaniac, and I don't think you can actually chart it. That's one of the reasons why everybody looks at him as a chaos agent, because he doesn't know. The guys around him don't know. As a matter of fact, you can look at his choice for Secretary of State in Marco Rubio and pair that against his choice for DNI and Tulsi Gabbard, and you can tell they have no idea. That in and of itself is a recipe for infighting in the cabinet. Those two people and their priorities, because, Rubio might have been more cautious than some of the, than Mitch McConnell, let's say, but he's no friend to Russia, and he's very suspicious of Russia as a proxy of China, and he's not wrong. So that his point man on Ukraine, this guy Keith Kellogg, has been in the past very vocal about supporting Kiev, but we'll have to see. I want to see what he does. Right. Well, and again, I will say that. No, of course not. But I also think
his history is good.
Yes, one of the things that benefited us, though, about, that January 6th happened in the way that it did and by the people that it did, is that they were all morons through and through, complete idiots. Many of them, want to be Machiavellians, but too stupid to pull it off. And that has not changed in this. In the people that he's putting forward. None of them know where where the bodies are buried, as it were, as far as the inner workings of any of these agencies they're being put in charge of. They will be slapdash in how they attribute it, and many of them will be like Chinese generals reporting back to Xi going, everything's working exactly to plan. You sure? Yeah, until it isn't, and then they just run off and blame somebody else. This is... Here's the secondary thing. We got to take a break. We'll come back and we'll hit some questions, Johnny, when we come back from the chat, because I'm sure they have them. Other than everybody just worried about Phil because you scared the crap out of them in the first segment, and they love you and they want.
Sorry.
No, you're not.
Look, before we go to break, I know you want to go to break, and I'm going to screw it up. I'm sorry. I've been watching Glory since. I watched it on Thanksgiving. It just was something that was on, and I kind of felt how appropriate that was. If the man of the 54th Massachusetts regiment can go to their death to create an emancipated country, if the guys can storm Normandy, if the men can stand at Yorktown. This is one of those moments. So I appreciate all the notes of concern, and I know I scared you, and I'm scared too. I'm scared. I'm really scared. But we all go sometime, and this is a just cause. So, sorry. There it is.
No, not at all. No apology necessary. We love you, so we're gonna think about you and worry about you in that process. It does not diminish. It does not diminish what you are actually doing that we feel this way. Just letting you know. We'll be back right after this. It's the HAL Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Philip Ittner has a show called On the Edge. Check it out if you would. And then, And then Johnny Million has a show called It's Johnny Million. Please check it out and subscribe. We'll be back. And Phil's just drinking toilet moonshine from a mason jar at this point. Just to
I should be.
Smoke them if you got them. I'm just kidding.
Lovely, pomegranate mixed with a little bit of cherry juice.
I actually have a new way to start my stream now. I'm just gonna every time I log in to start my stream, I'm just gonna say I could die. I could die.
Well,
which is true. I mean, I always say. I always say some bands get lucky enough to know they're having a farewell tour. Some not so lucky.
Yeah. What are you gonna
I'm
do?
just saying.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Also,
if I may,
it's not. I think it's that important.
Yes,
I think it's that important. I really do, and I think the fact that we have pretty much screwed it up should be rectified. I hope the European. Before we close tonight, we should talk a little bit about the Europeans who are actually, looking at releasing $300 billion worth of held Russian assets. If we're not going to do it, we're not going to do it, the Europeans might just step up and do it. And the Ukrainians aren't going anywhere either.
Well, the idea was that it should have been a slingshot anyways. The idea that look, we'll get you started and you guys can pick up the slack if Trump comes in. Thank you. If Trump or anybody comes in and tries to shut it down, or if the House and the Senate is capable of stopping funding.
I am happy, you are happy. Let us be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy. I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. Because isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you? Chugga chugga choo choo woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Yay! Hooray! One of my birthday gifts this year was a fart piano, and I'm very happy with it. I'm just saying, SG, thank you very much for this.
Yeah.
I'm going to learn Purple Rain on it.
Such a classy show.
It is.
I'm so humbled to be a participant.
The reality is, you got to keep on laughing, man. You got to smile.
Always look on the bright side
of life. I once got to sing that song with Eric Idle.
So. Envy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Untarnished envy.
And got a chance to tell him the story of when I used my last $20 in Aspen, literally, to buy the entire Python group onion rings at this restaurant. They were all gathered in this one place. We all saw them sitting at a table, and I couldn't afford to pick up their check, but the place was known for its beer battered onion rings. Apparently, that was a big deal. So I sent over 2 big orders of them, and that was my last $20. I didn't eat the rest of the day, and I didn't eat anything on the flight home because I wanted to buy onion rings for the surviving members of Monty Python, and I'm very proud of that fact.
And in a very similar way, I am willing to die for the cause of Ukraine. It's totally
parallel.
Equal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. To stand at the breach. Mm-hmm.
Yes, to stand at the breach and give you onion rings. That is my cause.
All right. So the thing I was showing, yes, the thing I was showing I put up a piece of news about the collapse of the ruble, and this founder of the Weimaojia business journal was doing this, doing the math effectively on WeChat, and they made him take it down about how Chinese exporters are losing a ton of money, and part of it was America's not buying stuff. There's all this concern in the future, even that there'll be these tariffs and stuff, but already there are a ton of tariffs anyways. But that the Russians aren't buying as much stuff because they're slingshotting. Even the stuff they're buying is leftover stuff that China shipped to Africa to try to buy their way into the market, and it's just sitting idle. So people are buying through other countries. And so the exporters in China aren't making any money because people are rather buy used Chinese crap from Africa than buy new Chinese crap directly from the country. And it's so much so. Yeah, they're both it's a mess. And again, this also goes to the one thing that may protect you more than anything in Kyiv is their reliance on China. Is their reliance on China as a backer, because China is not going to go for the bombing of a capital any more than the United States. Europe will, but China won't.
Well, I hope that's true. But what concerns me about this new weapon is that you could be pretty precise about it. And it wouldn't. What's going to be a problem for China is if Moscow carpet bombs Kiev or nukes it, because that on every screen, on every television around the world will change the history and the course of things. If they are able to precisely hit the presidential palace, the mayor's office, maybe the Independence Square, which is this missile that they exhibited in Dnipro, was able to do. And if I happen to be, because I live as close as I do to those locations, in the get caught in the crossfire, then I'm screwed.
No, I get that. What I'm saying is that China,
I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not scared.
Yeah,
I'm not. Well, I am scared, but I'm not going anywhere. But that they could potentially get away with. The question is, how many of these missiles do they have? How precise are they? Because the hit on Dnipro was not particularly precise, but it was, pretty intense. So we're worried. But again, I don't want to make myself into a martyr. I don't want to be like hyperbolic or overly emotional. But you stand for something or you don't.
Yeah.
And I've decided this is something I am going to stand for. And I've always said, I'm not going to go to the front because I want to be as careful. Well, those days are gone.
Yeah.
We're all targets now. And I've made the decision I'm not leaving. And I know that sounds dramatic and all emotional and all the rest of it. But
it's a reality.
I'm willing to sacrifice. And in essence, sacrifice everything. Because this is important. And we've done a really bad job in the press, and it's been great coming on and talking here. But I mean, do I want to die for this cause? No, I want to live for this cause. Yeah. But if it takes sacrifice, this is something we're sacrificing. I believe that. I believe that with my whole heart. I don't believe I'm afflicted with, savior complex. But some things you got to stand for. And again, I keep watching Glory, and it keeps moving me and informing me. Those guys knew they were going to die, and they still marched on Fort Wagner. They knew that they were going to die.
I am curious about one thing, as far as we noticed when October 7th happened, a serious pullback in the number of people covering Ukraine in Kyiv. Do you think there's been a return of anybody, as far as even some? And then would there be a belief that Russia would limit their strikes if they knew they were going to hit Western journalists and the like, and that kind of who would broadcast from the rooftop as there was a big news story about the embassy closing down, but they only closed down for about 2 days. They're still here. I think if the embassy, which is located in a very different part of the city from where Moscow and Putin are threatening to hit, but regardless, the State Department is incredibly cautious about their personnel. If we see them evacuating the embassy, I will become more concerned about my safety. I'm more concerned than I already am. They may do that, and I may still stay here. That's because they are an implement of the state. They are an implement of the government. I, as a sovereign citizen, have the right to put my life at risk. Something I really want to do. I would much rather be sitting on the lake, but I also know that this matters. Yeah, guys, this really, really matters. Absolutely. And if the worst happens, I'm at peace with that, because we cannot let Moscow be in the ascendancy again. We cannot let
that system of governance dominate the European continent, because that's what this is really about. And I hope to God that Americans will recognize that, whoever's in the Oval, and will do their very best, because this, at least to this American, is worth sacrificing everything.
Right.
That's where I am.
Well,
that's where I stand. I'm not moving. I'm not.
On that note,
I'm not going anywhere.
We're out of time.
I love
at
you
the end of the
guys.
hour. I'm sorry.
I love all
we
of
didn't
you.
get to the
I love
questions.
you, Hal. Johnny, I hope you're well.
Love you too,
all the
brother.
best.
And,
Hope you're well
and we
too,
think about
Philly
you
boy.
all the time. And we will see you next week by hook or by crook. And
By hook or
I
by
insist. Yep. So take care of yourself, and everybody out there, take care of somebody else. And also subscribe to both channels as if we intend to stream on, as it were. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, brother. All right. I don't know. Get to safety. Go, dig in, fill your belly.
Well, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do.
Right.
These things, Putin was saying they burn at something like 4,000 degrees or some crazy thing like that. These warheads that come down out of the multiple. It's, we can do. We're going to. Could happen 15 minutes from now. Could never happen.
Right.
Let's hope it never happens. But I'm not. I've come to peace with it. This is important, Hal. Yeah, I mean, this is really important. What happens?
I don't think Al believes you.
Really important.
I don't think he's in
look
on
at the
that.
cynicism in his eyes.
Yeah.
I know. I know. Well, I know it's dramatic. I'm sorry, but fuck it, man.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
It's
we all go sometime. I'd rather go for something I truly believe in. That's
Absolutely.
why we had the revolution, right? That's why we fought the Civil War.
That's right. So that
That's
these
why
assholes wouldn't take over again.
Yeah.
Right.
These fucking pricks.
And again, there's that whole thing like don't comply in advance, that people are really, getting, at least people, I think it's getting some market saturation, as they would say. People are starting to understand that don't comply in advance. The same thing is true of like, morbid fear of what Trump's going to do over here or what Putin will ultimately become capable of or whatever pull off. If it happens, it's going to happen whether you have any control of it or not. So the entire, even letting them hijack a single second of your capability with worry, which is weaponized imagination, is a waste of life. So completely agree.
I've been in combat. I've been in combat. I've been where I am now, and it's the possibility is very real. The imagination plays on you and all the rest of that kind of stuff. I've been here before. The difference is this time is that I'm not doing a job in terms of being a journalist, but I'm being somebody who is willing to, and God forbid the worst happens, I will have all of this on tape. And people will know why I made this choice. There it is.
And
God bless those men. I keep watching that movie. I've watched it over and over again in the last week. Thanksgiving week. They knew they were going to die. They knew they were going to die, but there were men who were willing to die for a greater good. And I'm not necessarily, comparing myself to them. But I am saying openly, if the worst happens, it's either that or on some hospital bed in my 80s or something,
Sure.
Okay.
But still, telling some really good stories during a sponge bath.
I don't have a death wish. I'm not looking for it. I'm just saying there are some things where you stand your ground, and I'm going to stand my ground.
Yeah. There has been some talk, and we'll talk about this next week, if it happens, of a second Kursk-like offensive in response to this, because one of the things that keeps Russia from being able to attack an area is if it's their own territory, and so they will, like a real, a real pushback or some negotiating point, the more territory they have in Russia when this happens. By the time Trump comes in, the more territory inside Russia they control, the more leverage they will have in getting their own territory back. And if you have a space of Russia the size of Crimea, let's say, and that's your stalking point, you know, hey, we'll give you your country back if you give us Crimea. You can keep Donetsk and Luhansk or whatever. That's how we're going to move forward. But we're going to have this isolated piece and we're blowing the shit out of that bridge. Call it a day. That really puts, Putin on his heels as far as negotiating points in a way that he wasn't before they invaded Kursk. So we shall see.
What's going to happen between now and January 20th? We'll see how it goes. I would be very surprised if he does not. I'll be happy, but I'll be very surprised if he doesn't chuck one of these things, these shipdicks, at us here in Kiev.
Right.
So, it's how we live, and it's how I'm not. Throw mine to wine. The Ukrainians are the ones. They're guys out in Kharkiv and Kherson and. All the cities in the east who are getting pelted every day, and they're not running away. So
right, and they're the prime targets for it. They're the ones that
and they're the ones the sharp end of the spear. So I mean, if sacrifice is called for, then I feel strongly enough about this that hopefully it doesn't happen. Hopefully I'm back in Michigan this time next year, and I'm having a barbecue and dipping my toes in the water. That's what I would like to see. But if it goes the other way, if it goes the other way, then so be it.
Absolutely. All right. Be well. I'll let you guys go.
Another man have for what is the old saying? Then he would lay down his life. Well, this is important enough that I'm. Yeah. That's where I'm at. So, love you guys. All right. Take care. I'll talk to you on Wednesday.
All right.
Johnny, go rock out, baby.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody. Love you, Phil.
All right. Take care, guys.
Be well. And let me bring in the chat room before I go, because that's intense, and it's a real thing, and it's why that is exactly why I've been talking about Ukraine since the very beginning, and why Phil has been a regular on here, and will continue to be, because it matters, even when people's attitudes ebbed and flowed about Ukraine during the last couple of years. I don't care. If I'm talking about it on here, I either think it's important or I think it's funny. Those two things, as long as it qualifies, and hopefully sometimes both. But it's important. I believe in the same thing Phil believes about this. So just letting you guys know. And I'm certain that over time, some members, the come and go crowd that watches have ebbed and flowed in their interest in the conflict and the like. But it matters, and it matters with a depth that I think, you saw today, hopefully. So much love to you guys. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you guys on Monday. Oh, and apparently, I don't know if I mentioned this before, and I hope I don't forget, but the kidney had made a...
The kidney has a very special place in the heart.
That is true. That is definitely... What?